"Security, stop that man!" Victoria Chen's voice cut through the crowded lobby like a gunshot. Every head turned. Every conversation died. The youngest CEO in Southgate Logistics history stood frozen. Her finger pointed directly at a maintenance worker's old metal toolbox. Marcus Johnson, 41. Black, dressed in a faded blue uniform, stopped mid-step. He didn't run. He didn't flinch. He simply turned around and met her eyes with a calm that made her blood run cold. "Why does my company's logo appear on your toolbox?" she demanded. Marcus looked down at the dented silver box in his hand, then back at her. "Because I created it," he said quietly. "Before you bought it." The entire lobby went silent. If those words just made your heart skip a beat, hit subscribe now, because what this single father has been hiding for 7 years is about to turn everything upside down. And when you reach the end, drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. 7:15 in the morning. Marcus Johnson walked through the employee entrance of Southgate Logistics headquarters like he had done every single day for the past 4 months. Badge in, head down, invisible. That was the way he liked it. At 41 years old, Marcus had perfected the art of being unseen. He moved through the building like a ghost, fixing what needed fixing, leaving before anyone could ask questions. Punching out at exactly 3:30 p.m. so he could pick up his daughter from school. Simple, quiet, safe. But today, something felt different. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the way the security guard at the front desk looked at him a second too long. Maybe it was the unusual number of executives gathered in the main lobby for some kind of morning event. Or maybe it was just that feeling you get sometimes, that sense that the universe is about to shift beneath your feet. Marcus ignored it. He had a clogged drain on the 4th floor waiting for him, and a 9-year-old daughter who expected him home on time. He gripped his toolbox tighter and headed for the service elevator. That's when he heard her voice. "Everyone, I want to thank you for being here this morning." Marcus glanced toward the lobby. Victoria Chen stood on a small platform near the reception desk, surrounded by at least 200 employees. She was 32 years old, Asian American, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. She'd been CEO for 3 years now, ever since her father Richard stepped down. Marcus had seen her before, of course, from a distance. Always from a distance. He'd never spoken to her, never planned to. Southgate Logistics has grown 40% this quarter. Victoria continued, her voice amplified by a wireless microphone. "And that growth is because of each and every one of you." Applause rippled through the crowd. Marcus kept walking. He was almost to the elevator when his toolbox caught the edge of a potted plant. The box slipped from his grip, clanged against the marble floor, and popped open. Wrenches scattered, screwdrivers rolled. A socket set spilled across the polished stone like silver rain. Every head in the lobby turned toward the noise. Marcus dropped to his knees, scrambling to gather his tools. His heart pounded. Don't look up. Don't make eye contact. Just clean it up and disappear. But when he reached for the toolbox lid, he froze. The fall had scraped away years of grime and tape from the metal surface, and there, exposed for the first time in years, was the faded logo he'd tried so hard to hide. Heritage Express. Est. 2014. "What is that?" The voice came from directly above him. Marcus looked up slowly. Victoria Chen stood 3 feet away, her microphone forgotten. Her eyes locked on the toolbox like she'd seen a ghost. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the disruption," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. "I'll have this cleaned up in—" "That logo." Victoria pointed at the box, her hand trembling slightly. "Where did you get that?" Marcus didn't answer. He closed the lid of the toolbox covering the logo and started placing tools back inside. "I asked you a question." Victoria's voice hardened. "That logo, Heritage Express, that's the company we acquired 7 years ago. That's our intellectual property. Why do you have it? More employees had gathered now. A circle formed around Marcus' phones, appearing in hands, whispers spreading like wildfire. A young executive in an expensive suit laughed. Maybe he grabbed it from the dumpster, probably found it somewhere and thought it was vintage. Another voice. Or he stole it from storage. Those old boxes were supposed to be destroyed. Victoria raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes never left Marcus. Stand up. Marcus stood slowly, the toolbox gripped in his left hand. He was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, his graying hair cropped short. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there 10 years ago. Lines carved by grief, by struggle, by years of carrying a weight no one could see. But his eyes were calm, almost peaceful. "What's your name?" Victoria demanded. "Marcus Johnson, ma'am. Maintenance department." Victoria frowned. The name meant nothing to her. "How long have you worked here?" 4 months. "And the toolbox, where did you get it?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. He looked down at the battered metal box, the same box he'd carried since 2014. The same box that had traveled with him through every triumph and every tragedy of his life. He could lie. He could say he found it. Say he bought it at a yard sale. Say anything that would make this moment disappear. But Marcus was tired of hiding. "I made it," he said quietly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You made it. What does that mean? The toolbox, the logo, the company." Marcus met her gaze directly. "I made all of it. Heritage Express was mine. I built it from nothing. And this box was with me from the very first day." The lobby went dead silent. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Victoria laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's impossible. The founder of Heritage Express disappeared years ago. Nobody knows where he went." "I didn't disappear." Marcus's voice was steady, almost gentle. "I've been here the whole time. Just nobody thought to look." Victoria's smile faded. Something in his tone, something in the absolute certainty of his words, made her doubt flicker across her face. "You're lying." "I'm not." Heritage Express was founded by a man with degrees, patents. He was a genius in logistics software. "You're a—" She stopped herself, but the word hung in the air anyway. "Janitor, maintenance worker, nobody." Marcus didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. "I have a degree from Georgia Tech," he said calmly. "Class of 2010, Supply Chain Management. I wrote the routing algorithm that Heritage Express was built on, the same algorithm this company still uses today. I wrote it in my grandmother's garage on a laptop held together with duct tape, while my wife made dinner in the next room." Victoria stared at him like he'd started speaking a foreign language. That's not possible." "You can check the original patents. The first 3 are still registered under my name. Your legal team never bothered to update them." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones were recording now. This was going viral, whether Victoria wanted it to or not. Dr. James Patterson pushed through the circle of employees. He was 63 years old, the company's chief technology officer, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been with Southgate since the Heritage Express acquisition. He'd been with Heritage Express before that. "Victoria." His voice was low, urgent. "We should take this somewhere private." "James, do you know this man?" Patterson looked at Marcus. Their eyes met for the first time in 7 years. Marcus saw recognition flash across the older man's face. Then pain. Then something that looked almost like shame. "Yes," Patterson said quietly. "I know him." "Then tell me who he is." Patterson took a deep breath. He looked at Victoria, then at the crowd of employees hanging on every word, then back at Marcus. "His name is Marcus Johnson, and 7 years ago he was my boss. He was the founder of Heritage Express. He was the man who invented the system that made this company worth $200 million. Patterson's voice cracked slightly. "And your father pushed him out right after his wife died." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's face went pale. "What did you say?" "I said your father took this company from him, paid him pennies on the dollar when he was too broken to fight back, when he had a 2-year-old daughter at home and a wife in the ground." "That's not true. My father built this company. Your father was an investor." Patterson's voice hardened. "An investor who saw an opportunity when a grieving man couldn't think straight. Marcus built this company. Every algorithm, every system, every innovation that made Heritage Express worth acquiring, it came from him." Victoria turned to Marcus, her face a mask of confusion and denial. "If this is true, if any of this is true, why are you here? Why are you working as a maintenance man in your own company?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked around at the faces staring at him. Curious faces, skeptical faces, pitying faces. He thought about his daughter Amara waiting for him at school every day at 3:45. He thought about the promise he'd made to himself 7 years ago. "Because this job lets me leave at 3:30, he said simply. "And my daughter needs me home." Victoria shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. You could have sued us. You could have gone to the press. You could have—" "I could have done a lot of things." Marcus's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "I could have spent years in courtrooms. I could have fought your father with lawyers and depositions and appeals. And maybe I would have won. Maybe I would have gotten back some money, some stock, some piece of what I built." He paused. "But my daughter would have grown up without a father. She would have eaten dinner alone while I sat in attorneys' offices. She would have gone to sleep without anyone to tuck her in. She would have learned that revenge mattered more to me than she did." Marcus shook his head slowly. "I already lost my wife. I wasn't going to lose my daughter too. So I let it go. I let all of it go. And I found a job that let me be home when she needed me." The crowd was utterly still. Somewhere a woman was crying softly. Victoria stared at Marcus like she was seeing him for the first time. "You gave up everything. For her. I gave up a company." Marcus's voice was gentle now. "I kept my daughter. That's not giving up everything. That's keeping what matters." Victoria took a step back. Her legs seemed unsteady. "I need to see proof," she said, but her voice had lost its edge. "I need to see documentation, patents, records. I have all of it." Marcus set down his toolbox and pulled out his phone. "Photos from when we started. The original incorporation papers. Pictures of me and my wife in the garage building the first prototype. And a photo of your father standing right between us the day he wrote his first check." He held out the phone. Victoria took it with trembling hands. She swiped through the images slowly. Her face changed with each one, confusion giving way to recognition. Recognition giving way to horror. The last photo showed 3 people standing in front of a warehouse. A young Marcus beaming with pride. A beautiful woman with braids and a radiant smile, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. And between them, arm around Marcus's shoulder like they were old friends, was Richard Chen, Victoria's father. The date stamp read August 2016. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "That's my father. That's your wife. Denise." Marcus's voice softened when he said her name. "She died November 15th, 2018. Truck ran a red light on Peachtree Street. She was 27 years old." Victoria looked up from the phone. Her eyes were wet. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know any of this." "I believe you. My father never told me how he acquired Heritage Express. He just said it was a good investment. A company with strong fundamentals whose founder wanted out." "That's one way to describe it." Victoria handed back the phone. Her hands were shaking badly now. "Mr. Johnson, Marcus, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to—" "You don't have to say anything." Marcus picked up his toolbox. "You asked why I have this logo. Now you know, that's all." He turned to walk away. "Wait." Victoria's voice stopped him. "You can't just leave. We have to talk about this. There has to be something I can do, some way to make this right." Marcus turned back. For the first time, he smiled a small, tired smile. "Ma'am, I've got a clogged drain on the 4th floor that's been waiting since yesterday. And in about 7 hours, I've got a 9-year-old daughter who's going to be standing outside her school looking for my car. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Not stock options, not settlements, not what your father did or didn't do 7 years ago." He paused. "You want to do something for me? Let me do my job. Let me leave on time. Let me go home to my daughter. That's all I've ever wanted." Victoria stood frozen as Marcus walked toward the service elevator. The crowd parted for him silently, like he was something sacred, something they didn't quite understand. Just before he reached the elevator, Patterson called out, "Marcus?" Marcus stopped but didn't turn around. "I should have said something back then, when Richard was pressuring you. When you were drowning and nobody threw you a line. I should have spoken up." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "You had a family too, James. A mortgage, kids in college. I understood. That doesn't make it right." "No." Marcus finally turned, meeting Patterson's eyes. "It doesn't. But holding on to it doesn't make it right either. It just makes it heavier." The elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped inside. "I'll be on the 4th floor," he said. "If anyone needs anything." The doors closed, and Victoria Chen stood in the middle of her lobby, surrounded by hundreds of employees, holding the shattered pieces of everything she thought she knew about her father, her company, and herself. Dr. Patterson appeared at her elbow. "Victoria, we need to talk. There's more you don't know." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "How much more?" Patterson looked at the elevator doors, still reflecting the ghost of the man who had just walked through them. "Everything," he said quietly. "You don't know anything at all." Victoria didn't move for a full minute after the elevator doors closed. The lobby had emptied employees, scattered back to their desks, but the whispers would travel through every floor before lunch. She could already imagine the Slack messages, the texts, the social media posts. Patterson touched her arm gently. "Victoria, my office. Now." She followed him like a sleepwalker. Patterson's office was on the 12th floor, a corner room with views of downtown Atlanta that he never seemed to notice. He closed the door behind them, locked it, and pulled the blinds shut. "Sit down." Victoria sat. Her legs wouldn't have held her much longer anyway. Patterson opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a worn manila folder. It was thick, stuffed with papers and photographs that looked like they'd been handled many times over the years. "I've kept this since 2019, he said quietly. "I told myself someday the truth would need to come out. I just never thought it would happen like this." "What is all that?" "Everything." Patterson set the folder in front of her. "The real history of this company. The real story of Marcus Johnson. And the real story of what your father did." Victoria's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The first page was a photocopy of an incorporation document. Heritage Express, LLC. Founded March 15, 2014. Atlanta, Georgia. Founders: Marcus D. Johnson, Denise M. Johnson. "They started it together," Patterson said. "Husband and wife. They were 26 years old. Didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but they had something better." "What?" "A vision, and the brains to make it real." Victoria turned to the next page, a photograph. Marcus and a beautiful black woman stood in what looked like a cramped garage. Circuit boards and computer equipment covered every surface. They were both grinning, holding up a laptop like it was a trophy. "That's Denise," Patterson said. "She was the operations genius. Marcus built the technology, but Denise figured out how to make it work in the real world. They were a perfect team." Victoria stared at the woman's face. She was radiant, full of life, her smile so wide it seemed to light up the faded photograph. "She's beautiful." She was, and brilliant. Harvard MBA could have worked anywhere, but she believed in Marcus's dream. She believed in him. What was the dream? Patterson leaned back in his chair. You have to understand what the delivery business looked like back then for small businesses. Big companies had logistics software tracking systems, route optimization. But mom-and-pop shops, black-owned businesses in neighborhoods that FedEx didn't prioritize, they were stuck using paper manifests and prayer. He pointed to the photograph. Marcus wrote an algorithm that changed everything. Same-day delivery optimization for small businesses. It could calculate the most efficient routes in real time, adjust for traffic, weather, driver availability, all of it. And he made it affordable. $20 a month for full access. $20. That was the whole point. He didn't want to get rich. He wanted to help businesses that looked like the one his grandmother ran. Patterson shook his head slowly. His grandmother had a bakery in southwest Atlanta. She lost it because she couldn't compete with delivery times. Customers stopped waiting 3 days for birthday cakes when Amazon could get them anything overnight. Marcus watched her lose everything she'd built over 40 years. He swore he'd never let that happen to another small business owner. Victoria turned to the next page. More photographs. Marcus and Denise in a small office now surrounded by employees. A banner on the wall read, Heritage Express, 1-year anniversary. They grew fast. Patterson continued. Word spread through the small business community. First Atlanta, then Birmingham, then Charlotte. By 2016, they had 100 employees and contracts with over 2,000 businesses across the South. That's when my father got involved. Patterson nodded slowly. Richard had been watching them for months. He saw what Marcus had built, and he saw dollar signs. Big dollar signs. The algorithm alone was worth tens of millions if it could be scaled nationally. So he invested. $3 million for 45% equity. Marcus didn't want to take it. He was worried about losing control, losing the mission. But Denise convinced him. She wanted the money. She wanted to scale, wanted to help more people, and she was pregnant. Patterson pulled out another photograph. Denise, her belly swollen, standing in front of a new warehouse. The sign above the door read, Heritage Express Distribution Center, coming soon. Amara was born September 2016, 6 pounds 4 ounces. Healthiest baby you ever saw. Marcus took one look at her and burst into tears. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. He told me about her. In the lobby. He said she was 9. She is. Just turned 9 last month. Same birthday as her mother. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. What happened next? Patterson's voice grew heavy. For 2 years, everything was perfect. Heritage Express became one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in the Southeast. Marcus handled the tech. Denise handled operations, and your father handled the money. Revenue doubled every quarter. They were on track to be worth $50 million by 2020. And then, Patterson was quiet for a long moment. November 15th, 2018. A Wednesday. Denise was driving home from the main warehouse. It was raining. She was on Peachtree Street, about 2 miles from their house. Victoria felt her stomach tighten. A delivery truck ran a red light. Driver was texting, never even saw her. Patterson pulled out a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. The headline read, Local business leader killed in traffic accident. She died instantly. The paramedics said she never felt any pain, for what that's worth. Victoria stared at the clipping. There was a photograph of Denise, the same radiant smile, the same bright eyes. Oh God. Amara was 2 years old. She was at home with Marcus's mother waiting for Denise to come home for dinner. Marcus was in a board meeting when he got the call. Patterson's voice cracked slightly. I was in that meeting. I watched him answer his phone. I watched his face go from confusion to terror to something I can't even describe. He didn't say a word. He just dropped the phone and ran. Knocked over 3 chairs getting to the door. I can still hear the sound of his footsteps in that hallway. Victoria wiped her eyes. I can't imagine. No one can. Not unless you've been through it. Patterson stood and walked to the window. I went to the funeral. It was at Ebenezer Baptist Church, same church where Martin Luther King preached. Denise's family had been members for 4 generations. There must have been 500 people there. Was Marcus okay? Patterson laughed bitterly. No, he wasn't okay. He wasn't anywhere close to okay. He walked through that funeral like a zombie. Held Amara the whole time. She kept asking where Mommy was. Kept asking why Mommy wouldn't wake up. He turned back to face Victoria. You want to know the worst part? The part that still keeps me up at night. What? Your father was at that funeral too. He gave a beautiful eulogy. Talked about what a wonderful woman Denise was. What a tragedy her loss was. How the company would honor her memory forever. Patterson's jaw tightened. And the whole time he was already planning how to take the company from Marcus. Victoria felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. That can't be true. It's true. I was there. I saw the emails. I heard the phone calls. Patterson pulled more papers from the folder. 2 weeks after the funeral. 2 weeks. Your father called a board meeting. Said he was concerned about Marcus's ability to lead. Said the company needed stable management during this difficult time. Marcus had just buried his wife. Yes, he had. And he was destroyed. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely form complete sentences. The only thing keeping him going was Amara. He'd rock her to sleep every night singing the same lullaby Denise used to sing. Patterson's voice hardened. Your father saw a broken man. And instead of helping him, instead of giving him time to grieve, he saw an opportunity. Victoria stood abruptly. I don't believe this. My father was many things, but he wasn't a vulture, a predator. Patterson shook his head. I wish I could tell you different. But I was there, Victoria. I watched it happen. Your father spent 6 weeks pressuring Marcus to sell his shares. Called him at midnight. Showed up at his house unannounced. Told him he was being selfish by staying involved, that he was hurting the employees, hurting the company Denise had helped build. Marcus could have said no. He couldn't. He was drowning. His wife was dead. His daughter cried every night for her mother. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night in 6 weeks. He could barely remember his own name, let alone fight a legal battle against a man with 100 lawyers on retainer. Patterson pulled out one final document, a single page creased and worn. Share purchase agreement, dated January 3, 2019. Marcus D. Johnson agrees to sell all shares and equity in Heritage Express LLC to Richard Chen for the sum of $120,000. Victoria took the paper with shaking hands. $120,000 the company was worth. $15 million at minimum. Probably more. Patterson sat down heavily. Your father got the algorithm, the customer base, the distribution network, the brand, everything. For less than 1% of what it was worth. That's theft. It's legal theft. Marcus signed the papers. He was competent enough to sign, just barely. But he signed. Victoria stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. Marcus D. Johnson. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, like it had been written by a man whose hands wouldn't stop trembling. Did he even read it? I doubt it. I was there that day too. Marcus showed up at the office in sweatpants and a wrinkled shirt. He hadn't shaved in weeks. His eyes were empty. Dead. He took the pen signed where your father pointed and walked out. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Didn't take anything from his office except that toolbox. Patterson pointed at the folder. That toolbox was the first thing Marcus bought when he started the company. Used his last $40 at a pawn shop in College Park. He used to joke that everything he built with those tools. That box was more important to him than any stock certificate. Victoria set down the document. Her hands were trembling badly now. What happened after he signed? He disappeared. No forwarding address, no phone number. Nobody in the industry knew where he went. People assumed he'd left Atlanta, maybe gone back to his family in Alabama. Some people thought he might have... Patterson stopped. Might have what? Patterson's voice was barely a whisper. Killed himself. That's what people thought. That's what I thought too for a while. The grief, the loss of his wife and his company, his daughter growing up without a mother, it would have broken most men. But he didn't. No, he didn't. He did something harder. He survived. He got a job as a maintenance worker because it was the only thing that would let him be home for Amara every afternoon. He moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur. He learned to cook, learned to braid hair, learned to be a mother and a father at the same time. Patterson looked at Victoria with something like wonder in his eyes. That man you saw in the lobby today, the one you accused of theft in front of 200 people, he spent the last 7 years putting his daughter first, every single day. Never missed a school pickup, never missed a bedtime story, never missed a birthday or a parent-teacher conference or a dance recital. How do you know all this? Because I found him, 3 years ago, saw him at a hardware store in Decatur buying supplies. He was wearing the same uniform he wears now. I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, grayer, but his eyes were different. They weren't dead anymore. They were alive. Did you talk to him? I tried. I walked up to him, started to apologize for everything that happened. You know what he said? Victoria shook her head. He said, "James, I forgave you a long time ago. I forgave all of you. I had to. My daughter needed a father who wasn't drowning in bitterness. So I let it go." Then he smiled at me, really smiled, and said, "I'm happy now. I'm poor, I'm tired, and I miss my wife every single day. But I'm happy. Can you say the same?" Patterson's voice broke. I couldn't say the same. I had everything, the title, the salary, the corner office, and I wasn't happy. But this man who'd lost everything, he'd found something I never had. Victoria sank back into her chair. Why didn't you tell me any of this? Because I was a coward. Because I didn't want to lose my job. Because I convinced myself it wasn't my story to tell. Patterson rubbed his eyes. But when I saw him in this building 4 months ago working as a janitor in the company, he built something inside me, broke. I started putting this folder together, started gathering evidence. I was going to come to you eventually. I just didn't expect it to happen like this. Victoria stared at the folder full of documents, photographs, evidence of her father's betrayal. He's been here 4 months, walking these halls, fixing toilets and changing light bulbs in the building his algorithm built. And nobody recognized him. Nobody was looking. That's the thing about maintenance workers. We look right through them. They're invisible. He wanted to be invisible. Yes, he just wanted to do his job and go home to his daughter. That's all he wanted. Victoria stood slowly and walked to the window. The Atlanta skyline stretched before her buildings. Her company's logistics network helped supply businesses. Her company's software helped run. All built on the foundation Marcus Johnson had created. What do I do, James? How do I make this right? Patterson was quiet for a long moment. I don't know if you can. Some things can't be fixed. Some debts can't be repaid. There has to be something. You could start by talking to him. Really talking. Not as a CEO to a maintenance worker, but as one human being to another. Ask him what he wants, what he needs. Victoria turned to face Patterson. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. He told me what he wanted. He said he just wants to keep his job and go home to his daughter on time. Then maybe that's your answer. That's not enough. It's not nearly enough. Patterson smiled sadly. For you, maybe. But for him, for a man who's learned to measure success in bedtime stories and school pickups instead of stock prices and profit margins, it might be everything. Victoria grabbed the folder from the desk. I need to think. I need to figure out what to do. Take your time. But Victoria, she paused at the door. Whatever you decide, remember what he said in that lobby. He's not looking for revenge. He's not looking for money. He's not looking to destroy your family's reputation. He's just a father trying to raise his daughter." Victoria nodded slowly. "And that's why I have to make this right, because he deserves better than invisibility, and so does his wife's memory." She walked out of Patterson's office clutching the folder to her chest like it contained the secrets of the universe, because in a way it did. It contained the truth about her father, her company, and the man who'd built it all from nothing, lost everything, and somehow found a way to keep going. The man who was probably at this very moment fixing a clogged drain on the 4th floor while counting down the minutes until he could go pick up his daughter. Victoria checked her watch. It was 11:47 a.m. She had until 3:30 to figure out how to begin fixing something that might be unfixable. She started walking toward the elevator. She had a maintenance worker to find. Victoria found him exactly where he said he'd be. 4th floor. Maintenance closet. On his knees in front of a utility sink, his arm buried up to the elbow in pipes, a bucket of murky water beside him. She stood in the doorway for a moment watching. Marcus worked methodically, his movements precise and unhurried. There was something almost meditative about the way he twisted the wrench, checked the connection, adjusted the seal. This was a man who'd once commanded boardrooms, who'd pitched to venture capitalists and negotiated million-dollar contracts, who'd built an algorithm that revolutionized an industry. Now he was unclogging a drain, and he didn't seem to mind at all. "Mr. Johnson." Marcus didn't startle. He glanced over his shoulder, then turned back to his work. "Ms. Chen, give me just a minute. Almost got this." Victoria waited. She watched him tighten something, test the water flow, nod with satisfaction. Then he stood, wiped his hands on a rag, and faced her. "What can I do for you?" "I spoke with Dr. Patterson." "I figured you would. He showed me everything, the documents, the photographs, the purchase agreement." Marcus's expression didn't change. And I need to understand." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "I need to understand how you can be here, how you can work in this building, walk these halls, fix toilets, and change light bulbs in the company you built, and not be angry, not be bitter, not want to burn it all down." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He folded the rag carefully, set it on the edge of the sink, and leaned against the wall. "Can I tell you something, Ms. Chen? Please. After Denise died, I was angry. So angry I couldn't see straight. I blamed God. I blamed the truck driver. I blamed your father. I blamed myself for not being there, for not driving her home that night, for not insisting she leave work earlier." He paused, his eyes distant. "I spent 6 months drowning in that anger. Couldn't work. Couldn't eat. Could barely take care of Amara. My mother had to move in with us because I was falling apart. That's understandable. Maybe. But it was also destroying me. And destroying my daughter." Marcus looked directly at Victoria. "You know what finally changed?" "What?" "One night about 3 in the morning, Amara woke up screaming. Nightmare. She'd been having them every night since Denise passed. I went to her room, picked her up, held her close. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe." Marcus's voice softened. "And she looked at me with those big brown eyes, her mother's eyes, and she said, 'Daddy, why are you always sad? Don't you love me anymore?'" Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "That broke me. Not my wife's death, not losing the company, not the betrayal. Those words from my 2-year-old daughter asking if I still loved her. That's what finally broke me." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I loved her more than anything in the world, more than my own life. And I promised her that I would stop being sad, that I would be there for her, that I would never ever let her feel unloved again." Marcus straightened up. "And that's when I realized something. I couldn't keep my promise to her if I was spending all my energy hating your father. I couldn't be the dad she needed if I was drowning in bitterness and revenge. So I made a choice." "You chose her." "I chose her. Every day for 7 years I've chosen her. And I'll keep choosing her until my last breath." Victoria wiped her eyes. "But doesn't it hurt, being here, seeing what the company became. Marcus smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. You want the honest truth? Yes. Sometimes. Sometimes I walk past the server room and remember the nights I spent coding until sunrise. Sometimes I see young engineers arguing about logistics algorithms, and I want to jump in, show them a better way. Sometimes I hear your name over the intercom and I think about everything your father took from me. He shrugged. But then I check my watch, and I see it's almost 3:30, and I know that in 45 minutes I'm going to pull up to my daughter's school, and she's going to come running out with that big smile on her face, and she's going to tell me about her day, and suddenly none of the rest of it matters. Victoria shook her head slowly. I don't understand how you do it. How you let go of something that big. I didn't let go of it. Not really. I just put it in a different place. Marcus tapped his chest. It's still in here. The love I had for that company. The pride I felt building it. The dreams Denise and I shared. All of it's still there. But it doesn't control me anymore. It doesn't own me. Because of Amara. Because of Amara. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what was Denise like? Really like? Marcus's face transformed. The weariness faded, replaced by something luminous. She was the best person I ever knew. Smartest woman in any room, but she never made you feel small. She had this laugh, this big loud laugh that made everyone around her start laughing too, even if they didn't know what was funny. He chuckled softly. She was stubborn as hell. Once she decided something was right, there was no changing her mind. We used to fight about the dumbest things. She'd insist on doing the dishes even though I told her I'd do them. She'd stay up until midnight reorganizing the garage because she couldn't sleep knowing things were out of place. She sounds amazing. She was. And she was a terrible cook. Marcus laughed. I mean truly terrible. She burned water. Literally burned water. Once she made spaghetti, and somehow the noodles turned gray. Gray, I still don't know how that's possible. Victoria found herself laughing too. But she tried. Every Sunday she'd make breakfast for us. Pancakes, eggs, bacon. Half of it would be burnt, half of it would be raw, and we'd eat every bite because she was so proud of herself. Marcus's eyes glistened. God, I miss those terrible pancakes. Did Amara know her? Does she remember? She was 2 when Denise died. She doesn't have real memories, just feelings mostly. The smell of Denise's perfume. The sound of her voice singing lullabies. Marcus swallowed hard. I tell her stories every night. About how her mom and I met. About building the company together. About the day she was born and how Denise cried for an hour straight because she was so happy. That's beautiful. It's all I can give her. Stories, pictures, but it's not enough. It'll never be enough. Victoria stepped closer. Marcus, I want to make things right. I know I can never undo what my father did, but there has to be something. Ms. Chen. Please, let me finish. Victoria took a breath. I've been CEO of this company for 3 years. I thought I earned this position. I thought my father built something from nothing, and I was continuing his legacy. But now I know the truth. Everything I have, the title, the company, the reputation, it's all built on what you created, and what my father stole. Marcus studied her face. What are you proposing? I don't know yet. That's the honest answer. But I want you involved in whatever comes next. Not as a maintenance worker, as a partner, as the person who should have been here all along. Marcus shook his head slowly. I appreciate the sentiment, I do. But I don't want to be a partner. I don't want a corner office or a fancy title. I've been there. I've done that. And I know what it costs. Then what do you want? I told you, I want to do my job and go home to my daughter. Victoria's frustration bubbled over. That's not enough. Don't you see that you deserve more than this? You deserve what I deserve. Marcus's voice hardened slightly. Let me tell you what I've learned about what people deserve. My wife deserved to grow old with me. She deserved to see her daughter graduate high school, go to college, get married. She deserved to meet her grandchildren. She deserved a long, happy life full of terrible pancakes and burned spaghetti. His voice cracked. But she didn't get what she deserved. She got a truck running a red light. She got 27 years instead of 80. She got a husband who couldn't protect her, and a daughter who'll never really know her. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. So forgive me if I don't spend too much time worrying about what I deserve. I've got today. I've got my daughter. I've got enough money to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. That's more than a lot of people have. That's enough for me. Victoria stood frozen. She'd prepared arguments, counterpoints, business proposals. None of them seemed to matter now. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Marcus picked up his toolbox. I need to get to the 6th floor. There's a flickering light in the break room that's been driving people crazy. He started to walk past her, then stopped. Ms. Chen. Yes. Your father wasn't a good man. I think you're starting to understand that. But that doesn't mean you can't be different. Whatever he did, whatever mistakes he made, those are his sins, not yours. Don't spend your life trying to pay for something you didn't do. Victoria looked at him. How can you be so forgiving? Marcus smiled sadly. Because I had to be. Because my daughter needed a father, not a victim. Because Denise would have wanted me to live. Really live, not just survive. He paused at the door. And because holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I did that for 6 months after Denise passed. Nearly killed me. So I stopped. Poured the poison out and started over. Is it really that simple? It's not simple at all. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than building a company. Harder than losing my wife. Harder than watching everything I built get taken away. Marcus met her eyes. But I did it. One day at a time. One choice at a time. And after a while it got easier. Not easy. Just easier. He walked out. Victoria stood alone in the maintenance closet, surrounded by mops and buckets and cleaning supplies, trying to process everything she'd just heard. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Board meeting in 30 minutes. They're asking about the lobby incident. Victoria stared at the message. In 30 minutes, she'd have to face a room full of executives who'd seen the video, heard the whispers, drawn their own conclusions. She had a choice to make. She could minimize, spin, control the narrative, protect her father's memory and her family's reputation. Or she could tell the truth. For the first time in her life, Victoria Chen understood what real courage looked like. It didn't look like boardroom presentations or hostile takeovers or billion-dollar deals. It looked like a man in a maintenance uniform fixing broken things in the company he built, counting down the minutes until he could pick up his daughter from school. Victoria typed a reply to her assistant. Cancel the board meeting. I need more time. Then she walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. She had somewhere else to be first. The Decatur Library was quiet in the early afternoon. Victoria had gotten the address from HR. Marcus's emergency contact file listed his home address in Decatur, and a quick search told her Amara's school was 3 blocks from the main library. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for. Maybe she just needed to see it, to understand what Marcus had built in place of everything he'd lost. She parked across the street and waited. At 3:35, a familiar blue Honda pulled into the school pickup line. Victoria watched as Marcus got out, walked to the entrance, and waited. A minute later, a little girl came running out. Amara Johnson was small for her age, with her mother's bright eyes and her father's broad smile. She wore a purple backpack that was almost as big as she was, and her hair was done in neat braids with colorful beads at the ends. She ran straight to Marcus and leaped into his arms. Victoria couldn't hear what they said, but she could see them both laughing. Marcus swung Amara around in a circle, then set her down and knelt to her level. They talked for a moment, Amara's hands moving animatedly as she told him something, and then Marcus stood, took her hand, and walked her to the car. Before they drove away, Marcus happened to glance across the street. He saw Victoria. Their eyes met. Victoria expected anger, suspicion, maybe fear. Instead, Marcus just nodded, a simple acknowledgement. Then he got in the car and drove away. Victoria sat there for a long time watching the empty street. This was what Marcus had chosen over everything else. Over money, over revenge, over justice. Picking up his daughter from school, listening to her stories, being there. Was it enough Victoria thought about her own childhood, her father's absence, the empty seats at school plays, the missed birthdays, the constant feeling that she was never quite important enough to compete with the next deal, the next acquisition, the next conquest. Richard Chen had built an empire. He'd died with more money than he could ever spend. His name was on buildings, on scholarships, on donor walls throughout Atlanta. But Victoria couldn't remember the last time he'd picked her up from school. Couldn't remember him ever asking about her day or listening to her stories or just being there. She understood now why Marcus had made the choice he'd made. And she understood finally what she needed to do. Victoria started her car and drove back to the office. It was time to face the board. The conference room was full when Victoria arrived. 12 board members plus Patterson plus the company's legal counsel. They all turned when she walked in. Victoria. Board Chairman Harold Green stood. "We've been trying to reach you for hours. The video from this morning is everywhere. We need to—" "I know what you're going to say, Harold." Victoria set Patterson's folder on the table. "You're going to tell me to minimize. Control the narrative. Protect the company's reputation and my father's legacy." Harold nodded cautiously. "That would be the prudent course." "Prudent, yes, it would be." Victoria opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. "But I'm not going to do that." Victoria. Everything that man said in the lobby this morning was true. Marcus Johnson founded Heritage Express. My father pushed him out weeks after his wife died, paid him a fraction of what his shares were worth when he was too grief-stricken to fight back. The room went silent. These are the original incorporation documents. These are photographs of Marcus and his wife building the company from nothing. And this, Victoria held up the purchase agreement, is the contract my father used to steal everything from him. Harold's face had gone pale. "Victoria, if this gets out." "It's already out. The whole world watched me accuse the founder of our company of theft this morning. The only question now is what we do about it." Legal counsel Jennifer Martinez leaned forward. "Ms. Chen, I strongly advise against making any admissions. We could be looking at significant legal liability." "I don't care about legal liability." Victoria's voice was steel. "I care about doing what's right." Patterson spoke up quietly. "Victoria, Marcus doesn't want money. He doesn't want revenge. He made that very clear." "I know, and that's exactly why he deserves better." Victoria looked around the table. That man lost his wife, lost his company, lost everything, and he responded by becoming the best father he could possibly be. He works as a maintenance worker, so he can pick up his daughter from school every day at 3:30. He doesn't want our money. He doesn't want our apologies. He just wants to be left alone to raise his child. She paused. But his wife's memory deserves more than silence, and his daughter deserves to know that her mother's legacy lives on. Harold cleared his throat. "What exactly are you proposing?" Victoria straightened her shoulders. "I'm proposing we establish the Denise Johnson Scholarship Fund. Full college scholarships for children of employees at every level, from executives to maintenance workers. I'm proposing we rename our innovation center the Johnson Innovation Lab in honor of both Marcus and Denise. And I'm proposing we issue a public statement acknowledging what my father did and committing to do better." Jennifer shook her head. "The legal exposure alone will be handled." Victoria cut her off. "We'll work with Marcus. We'll get his input. We'll do this the right way." Harold stood slowly. And if the board doesn't agree? Victoria met his eyes. Then I'll resign, and I'll go public with everything anyway. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, objections, concerns, warnings. Victoria let them talk. When the noise finally died down, she spoke again. My father spent his whole life building wealth, building power, building a reputation. And when he died, what did he leave behind? Money that I didn't earn. A company built on someone else's sacrifice. A legacy of taking instead of giving. She looked around the table. Marcus Johnson has almost nothing. A small apartment, an old car, a job that pays barely enough to cover his bills. But he has something my father never had. He has a daughter who knows he'll always be there. Who knows she's more important than any business deal or stock price or corporate ladder. Victoria's voice softened. That's what legacy really looks like. Not buildings with your name on them. Not newspaper headlines. A child who knows she's loved. That's all that matters in the end. The room was silent. Finally, Harold spoke. How do we even begin to approach him? After what happened this morning. Victoria smiled slightly. We don't approach him. We don't ambush him. We don't corner him in lobbies or maintenance closets. We give him time. We show him through actions, not words, that we mean what we say. She gathered the documents back into the folder. And when he's ready, if he's ever ready, we sit down together and figure out what comes next. Patterson nodded slowly. He's a good man, Victoria. The best I've ever known. I know. Victoria tucked the folder under her arm. That's why we're going to do this right. For him. For his daughter. For Denise. She walked out of the conference room, leaving the board members to argue among themselves. She had made her choice. Now it was time to earn Marcus Johnson's trust. One day at a time. One action at a time. Just like he'd done for 7 years. 3 weeks passed. Victoria kept her word. No ambushes. No surprise meetings. No pressure. She watched Marcus from a distance, saw him arrive every morning at 7, saw him leave every afternoon at 3:30 sharp. She noticed how the other employees looked at him now differently. Word had spread through the company like wildfire. The maintenance man who built everything. The founder hiding in plain sight. Some employees nodded at him in the hallways now. Some said good morning. A few even stopped to shake his hand to thank him for what he'd created. Marcus accepted it all with quiet grace, neither seeking attention nor running from it. But Victoria could tell something had shifted in him too. A weight seemed lighter. Attention had eased. Being seen, really seen after 7 years of invisibility, it meant something, even if he'd never admit it. On the 22nd day, Marcus knocked on her office door. Victoria looked up from her laptop. Marcus, come in. He stepped inside but didn't sit. He stood near the door, his toolbox in hand, still in his maintenance uniform. I heard about the board meeting, he said. Patterson told me what you proposed. Did he tell you the board agreed? He did. Victoria waited. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he wasn't sure how to say. Why? He finally asked. Why what? Why are you doing all this? The scholarship, the lab, the public statement. Marcus shook his head slowly. Your father's been dead 3 years. Nobody's forcing you to dig up his mistakes. You could have buried this whole thing. Protected his memory. Protected yourself. Victoria leaned back in her chair. You want the honest answer. That's the only kind I'm interested in. Because I watched you walk away from me in that lobby and I realized something. You had every right to be angry. Every right to want revenge. But instead you just wanted to go fix a drain and pick up your daughter. Victoria's voice softened. That's not weakness, Marcus. That's strength. The kind of strength I've never seen before. Marcus said nothing. And because my father never taught me what integrity looked like. He taught me how to win, how to negotiate, how to come out on top. But he never taught me how to be good. Victoria stood and walked to the window. You did. In 5 minutes in that lobby, you taught me more about character than he did in 32 years. I'm not a saint, Ms. Chen. I know. But you're a good man, and good men deserve better than what my family gave you. Marcus was quiet again. Then he walked to the chair across from her desk and sat down, setting his toolbox on the floor beside him. There's something I need to tell you, he said. Something I should have told you before you went to the board. Victoria sat back down. I'm listening. Your father. He wasn't all bad. Victoria blinked. What? Don't get me wrong. What he did to me was wrong. Taking the company when I was broken, paying pennies for something worth millions, that was predatory. I won't pretend otherwise. Marcus rubbed his hands together. But before Denise died, before everything fell apart, he was good to us. Really good. I don't understand. When we first started Heritage Express, we were broke. I mean, eating ramen for every meal broke. We couldn't afford office space. Couldn't afford to hire help. We were running the whole operation out of my grandmother's garage with 2 laptops and a prayer. Marcus smiled slightly at the memory. Your father found us at a small business expo in 2016. We had a booth the size of a closet, a banner we'd printed at Kinko's, and a demo that crashed twice while we were showing it to him. Most investors would have walked away. But Richard sat there for an hour, asking questions, really listening. And at the end he said, I believe in you, both of you. Let's build something together. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. He said that. He did. And for 2 years he meant it. He was patient when the numbers were bad. He gave us advice when we needed it. He even helped Denise find specialists when she had complications during her pregnancy. Marcus's voice grew heavy. When Amara was born, your father sent us a crib. A really nice one. Had it delivered to the hospital. The card said, for the newest member of the Heritage Express family. Victoria's eyes were wet. I never knew any of that. Why would you? You were in college then, building your own life. You didn't know what your father was doing in boardrooms and garages around Atlanta. So what changed? Marcus's face darkened. Money changed. Success changed. The bigger the company got, the more your father saw dollar signs instead of people. He started talking about scaling and exit strategies and maximizing shareholder value. The mission helping small businesses, supporting communities, that started to feel like an obstacle to him. A limit on profits. And then Denise died. Marcus's voice dropped. And suddenly, I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a liability. A broken man standing between Richard and the fortune he could make by selling the company. Victoria shook her head. Did he ever apologize? Ever show any remorse? Once. A year after I signed the papers, he tracked me down. I was working as a night janitor at a hospital in Decatur. He showed up at 2 a.m., waited until my break, and asked if we could talk. What did he say? Marcus laughed bitterly. He said he was sorry. He said he never meant for things to go the way they did. He said if he could go back and do it differently, he would. Did you believe him? I don't know. Maybe. He seemed tired, old, like the weight of what he'd done was finally catching up to him. Marcus paused. He offered me money, a settlement, said he'd give me $2 million and a public acknowledgement that I'd founded the company. Victoria leaned forward. You turned it down. I turned it down. Told him I didn't want his money. Told him the only thing I wanted was to never see him again. Why? Marcus met her eyes. Because taking his money felt like selling Denise a second time, like putting a price tag on everything we'd built together. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let him buy his way out of what he'd done. Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then she asked quietly, Do you regret it? Turning down the money. Sometimes, when Amara needs new shoes and I'm counting pennies. When the car breaks down and I'm not sure how I'll pay for repairs. When I think about college and know I can't afford to send her anywhere decent. Marcus shrugged. But then I remember what it felt like to build something with my own hands. To look my daughter in the eye and know I never sold my soul for a check. And the regret goes away. Victoria wiped her eyes. You're a better person than I am, Marcus. No. I'm just a person who made choices, same as everyone else. They sat in silence for a while. Then Marcus spoke again. There's something else I need to tell you. Something about Amara. Victoria straightened. Is she okay? She's fine. Marcus smiled. She's amazing, actually. Smart as a whip. Her mother's brains. She reads at a 7th grade level, does math problems in her head faster than I can punch them into a calculator. That's wonderful. It is. But she's been asking questions lately. About her mother. About me. About why we live the way we do. Marcus's smile faded. Last week she asked why I never talk about my old job. She said she saw something online, a video. The video from the lobby. Victoria's heart sank. Oh no. Oh yes. 9 years old, and she watched her father get accused of theft in front of hundreds of people. Watched him stand there while strangers laughed at him. Marcus's voice tightened. She came home from school and she was crying. She said the other kids were talking about it, saying things. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I never meant for... I know you didn't. Marcus held up his hand. But it's done. And now I have to explain to my daughter why her father works as a janitor in the company he built. Why we live in a small apartment when we used to have dreams of a house with a big backyard. Why her mother isn't here, and why the world seems so unfair sometimes. Victoria felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What did you tell her? Marcus took a deep breath. I told her the truth. All of it. Everything I've been protecting her from for 7 years. Everything. Everything. How her mother and I started the company. How we fell in love building it together. How she died. How I lost the company. Why I made the choices I made. How did she react? Marcus's eyes glistened. She hugged me. Just wrapped her little arms around my neck and held on for about 10 minutes. Didn't say a word. Just held on. Victoria couldn't speak. She just listened, tears streaming. And then she looked at me with those eyes. Denise's eyes. And she said something I'll never forget. What? She said, Daddy, I'm proud of you. I'm proud you chose me. Marcus's voice broke. 9 years old. 9 years old, and she understood what I'd done. What I'd sacrificed. She understood, and she was proud of me. Victoria stood up, walked around the desk, and did something she'd never done with an employee before. She hugged him. Marcus stiffened for a moment, surprised. Then he softened and let her hold him. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered. I'm so sorry for what my father did. For what I did in that lobby. For all of it. I know. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all? Marcus pulled back gently. He wiped his eyes and took a shaky breath. There is, actually. Name it. Amara wants to meet you. Victoria stared at him. She wants to meet me. She saw the video of you apologizing at the board meeting. Someone posted it online. She watched the whole thing. And she said she wants to meet the woman who told the truth when she didn't have to. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll come to our apartment this Saturday for dinner. Nothing fancy, I'm not much of a cook. But Amara makes really good pancakes. Learned from watching videos online because... He laughed softly. Because her mother was the worst cook in the world, and I'm not much better. Victoria smiled through her tears. I would be honored. Marcus stood and picked up his toolbox. Saturday, 6 o'clock. I'll text you the address. He walked to the door, then stopped. Ms. Chen. Victoria, please. Victoria. Marcus turned to face her. Thank you for telling the truth, for not letting my wife's memory disappear into corporate history, for caring about my daughter's feelings when you didn't have to. It was the least I could do. No, it was the most you could do. It took courage. Real courage. Marcus nodded slowly. Denise would have liked you. She always said she could tell a person's character by how they acted when no one was forcing them to be good. You passed that test. He walked out, leaving Victoria standing alone in her office. She looked at the photograph on her desk, her father smiling at some corporate event surrounded by people who wanted something from him. She picked it up and studied his face. The man she thought she knew. The man who had apparently been capable of both great kindness and terrible cruelty. She set the photograph face down in her drawer and closed it. Then she turned to her computer and began typing an email. To all Southgate Logistics employees. Subject: the truth about our company's history. She wrote for 2 hours straight. Every word careful. Every sentence deliberate. The full story. Marcus and Denise, the founding of Heritage Express. Her father's investment. The tragedy, the betrayal. All of it. When she finished, her finger hovered over the send button. Once she clicked it, there was no going back. The world would know. The stockholders, the press, the competitors. Everyone. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. Saturday 6 p.m. Amara is already planning the menu. She says she hopes you like burned toast because that's her specialty. Victoria laughed out loud. The first real laugh she'd had in weeks. She looked at the email one more time. Then she pressed send. The truth was finally free. And somehow, that felt more valuable than anything her father had ever taught her to pursue. Saturday came faster than Victoria expected. She stood outside Marcus's apartment building for 5 minutes before finding the courage to go inside. It was a modest complex in Decatur, clean, but clearly budget-conscious. The kind of place where working people stretched paychecks and hoped for better. She'd brought flowers. And a book for Amara, a collection of biographies of women in science that her assistant had recommended. And wine for Marcus, though she wasn't sure if he drank. She felt ridiculous. Overdressed. Out of place. The CEO of a $200 million company, nervous about dinner, with a maintenance worker and his 9-year-old daughter. But that was the point, wasn't it? Stripping away the titles and the power and the money. Meeting each other as human beings. She took a deep breath and rang the bell. The door opened immediately, and there she was, Amara Johnson, 9 years old. Her mother's bright eyes, her father's broad smile, hair in fresh braids with purple beads that matched her purple sweater. "You must be Victoria," Amara said excitedly. "Dad told me all about you. Come in, come in." Victoria stepped inside, and immediately the smell hit her, something burning mixed with what might have been cinnamon. "I made pancakes," Amara announced proudly. "Well, I tried to make pancakes. Dad says they're character building." Marcus appeared from the kitchen wearing an apron that said, "World's okayest dad," and holding a spatula. "That's code for slightly charred but edible," he said with a grin. "Welcome, Victoria. Make yourself at home." The apartment was small but warm. Photographs covered every wall, Amara at various ages, Marcus with his mother, and in the center of the living room, a large framed portrait of Denise. Victoria stopped in front of it. "That's my mom," Amara said softly, appearing at her elbow. "She was really pretty, wasn't she?" "She was beautiful," Victoria whispered. "And from what I've heard, she was brilliant too." "The smartest woman in any room," Amara recited clearly, quoting her father. "That's what Daddy always says." "He's right." Amara studied Victoria for a moment. "Are you the one who made my daddy cry?" Victoria's heart clenched. "In the lobby. Yes, I'm afraid I am." "But you also made it better, right? That's what Daddy said. You told the truth, even when you didn't have to." "I tried." Amara nodded solemnly, as if weighing this information. Then she smiled. Want to see my room? I have all the books. Victoria laughed. I would love that. The evening unfolded slowly, gently, like something fragile being unwrapped with care. They ate Amara's pancakes, which were indeed slightly charred, but surprisingly delicious with enough syrup. They talked about school, about books, about Amara's dream of becoming a marine biologist. I want to study the ocean, she explained seriously. Because there's so much we don't know about it, and maybe if we understood it better, we could protect it better. Marcus watched his daughter with such love in his eyes that Victoria had to look away. After dinner, Amara insisted on showing Victoria her laboratory, a corner of her bedroom filled with science kits, nature journals, and a fish tank with 2 goldfish named Einstein and Marie Curie. Marie Curie was a scientist too, Amara explained. She discovered radiation. My dad says I'll discover something important someday. I believe him, Victoria said. When it was time to go, Amara hugged Victoria tightly. Will you come back? I have more experiments to show you. I would like that very much. Marcus walked Victoria to her car. The night was warm, the stars visible even through Atlanta's light pollution. Thank you, Victoria said, for inviting me, for trusting me with her. She liked you. That's not easy to earn. Marcus smiled. She's a tough critic. She's amazing, Marcus. You've done an incredible job raising her. She's half her mother, the good half. His voice softened. Denise would have been so proud of her. Victoria hesitated, then asked the question she'd been holding all evening. What was it like after you told her everything? Marcus thought for a moment. Hard. Really hard. She asked questions I didn't know how to answer. She cried when I told her about her mother's death. She got angry when I explained what your father did. Angry at him? Angry at all of it. The unfairness, the injustice. She's 9 years old, but she understands more than I give her credit for. Marcus shook his head. But then something shifted. She stopped being angry and started being curious. Curious about what? About who her mother really was. Not the saint I'd painted for her, but the real person. The woman who burned water and laughed too loud and fought for what she believed in. She wanted to know all of it. And you told her. I told her everything, the good, the bad, the mundane. How Denise couldn't parallel park to save her life. How she sang off-key in the shower every morning. How she stayed up until 3 a.m. arguing with me about algorithm efficiency. Marcus laughed softly. Amara ate it up. Every detail. She said it made her mom feel real for the first time. Victoria felt tears threatening again. That's beautiful, Marcus. It was necessary. I'd been protecting her from pain for so long I forgot that pain is part of knowing someone. You can't really love a memory. You have to love a person, flaws and all. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Victoria spoke. The board approved the scholarship fund yesterday. We're announcing it next week. Full tuition for children of employees at every level. We're calling it the Denise Johnson Memorial Scholarship. Marcus was very still. And the Innovation Lab. It's being renamed this month. The Johnson Innovation Lab. There'll be a plaque with both your names. Marcus's voice was thick when he finally spoke. You didn't have to do any of that. Yes, I did. Not because you asked. Because it's right. Victoria met his eyes. Your wife deserves to be remembered. Not as a line in a corporate history, but as the brilliant, passionate woman she was. And your daughter deserves to grow up knowing that her mother's legacy lives on. Marcus turned away, wiping his eyes quickly. Denise would have hated all the attention. She always said the work mattered more than the credit. Then we'll make sure the work continues. The scholarship, the lab, the mission you started helping small businesses supporting communities. We'll make it real again. Marcus turned back, studying her face in the dim light. You mean that? I do. Why? You could have just written a check and moved on. Why go this far? Victoria thought for a long moment before answering. Because I spent my whole life trying to be my father's daughter, chasing his approval, building what he wanted me to build. And now I realize that everything he taught me about success was wrong. She looked up at the stars. You showed me something different, Marcus. You showed me that success isn't about winning. It's about choosing what matters and sticking with that choice, even when it costs you everything. She looked back at him. I want to be that kind of person. I want to build that kind of legacy. Marcus nodded slowly. It's not easy. The path you're describing. I know. You'll make enemies, lose money, have people question your judgment. I know that too. And there'll be days when you wonder if any of it matters, when the world seems too broken to fix and your efforts feel like drops in an ocean. Victoria smiled. What do you do on those days? Marcus glanced back at his apartment building at the window where Amara's light still glowed. I pick up my daughter from school. I ask about her day. I make dinner even when I'm tired. I read her stories until she falls asleep. He turned back to Victoria. And I remember why I'm doing any of this in the first place. For her. For her. Always for her. Victoria opened her car door, then paused. Marcus. Yeah. Thank you. For forgiving me. For giving me a chance to make this right. For introducing me to your daughter. She took a breath. And for showing me what a good man looks like. Marcus smiled that warm, genuine smile she'd seen him give Amara. Good night, Victoria. Drive safe. Good night, Marcus. She drove away, watching his figure grow smaller in the rearview mirror. And for the first time in years, Victoria Chen felt something she'd almost forgotten was possible. 6 years later, the Johnson Innovation Lab hummed with energy on a Thursday afternoon in late September. Engineers clustered around workstations, arguing over code and sketching algorithms on whiteboards. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the bronze plaque that hung near the entrance. Marcus Johnson stood at his desk, reviewing blueprints for a new logistics system designed to serve rural communities in Appalachia. At 47, his hair had turned mostly gray, but his eyes were bright and clear. He wore a button-down shirt now instead of a maintenance uniform, though he kept the old navy blue jacket hanging in his office closet. A reminder of where he'd been. The toolbox sat on a shelf behind his desk, still dented, still scratched, still bearing the faded Heritage Express logo he'd carved into the metal more than a decade ago. Some things he'd learned were worth keeping. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara. On my way up. Finished early. Don't forget, we're having dinner with Victoria tonight. Marcus smiled and typed back. How could I forget? She's been texting me menu options all week. She's nervous. It's cute. Don't tell her I said that. Too late. Already screenshotting. Marcus laughed and set down his phone. His daughter had inherited her mother's wit along with her brains. Sometimes talking to her felt like talking to Denise, the same quick humor, the same refusal to let him take himself too seriously. The door opened, and Amara walked in. 15 years old now, tall like her father, with her mother's eyes and a confidence that seemed to fill whatever room she entered. She wore her Georgia Tech hoodie, a not-so-subtle hint about where she planned to apply next year. Hey, Dad. Hey, baby girl. I'm 15. You can't call me baby girl anymore. I'm 47. I can call you whatever I want. Amara rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. She dropped her backpack on the floor and walked to the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. I talked to my guidance counselor today, she said, about the scholarship. Marcus set down his pen. And she said I'm a strong candidate. My grades are good. My test scores are solid. And the essay I wrote about Mom. Amara paused. She said it made her cry. It made me cry too. You cry at car commercials, Dad. Only the ones with dogs. Amara laughed, but then her expression grew serious. She turned to face him. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever regret it? Not fighting harder to keep the company, not taking the money when Richard offered it? Marcus leaned back in his chair. It wasn't the first time she'd asked this question. It probably wouldn't be the last. But he'd learned that sometimes the same question needed different answers at different times. "Come here," he said. Amara walked over and sat on the edge of his desk the way she'd done since she was small enough to fit in his lap. "When your mother died," Marcus began slowly, "I thought my life was over. Not just the company, not just my career, my actual life. I couldn't see any future that made sense without her. I know. But then I looked at you. 2 years old. You didn't understand what had happened. You just knew that mommy wasn't coming home and daddy was always sad. You needed me to be present, to be there, to choose you over my grief, my anger, my sense of injustice." Marcus took her hand. "So I made a choice. I let go of everything that would have kept me from being your father. The lawsuits, the revenge, the obsession with what I'd lost. I traded all of it for the chance to pick you up from school every day, to be home for dinner, to read you stories until you fell asleep. Was it worth it?" Marcus smiled. "Look around you, Amara. Look at this lab. Look at the scholarship that bears your mother's name. Look at the hundreds of small businesses our systems help every day." He squeezed her hand. "But more than any of that, look at you. Smart, kind, driven. Everything your mother was and more. You're my legacy. Not this company, not these algorithms. You." Amara's eyes glistened. "I miss her, Dad. I know I barely knew her, but I miss her. I know, baby. I miss her too, every single day." "Does it ever get easier?" Marcus thought for a moment. "The sharp edges get softer. The constant ache becomes more like a background hum. But easier, no. I don't think it gets easier. You just get stronger. Strong enough to carry it without letting it crush you." Amara wiped her eyes. "Mom would be proud of you. You know that, right? She'd be proud of both of us." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Amara spoke again. "Victoria said she has something special planned for tonight. She wouldn't tell me what." "She wouldn't tell me either, said it was a surprise. I hope it's not karaoke again. That woman cannot sing." Marcus laughed. "Your mother couldn't either. Maybe it runs in the family." "Victoria's not family." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "No, but she's become something close to it, hasn't she?" Amara nodded slowly. "Yeah, she has." Over the past 6 years, Victoria had become a fixture in their lives. Not a replacement for anything. Not for Denise. Not for the childhood Marcus had sacrificed. Not for the lost years. But something new. Something built from choice rather than obligation. She'd kept every promise she made. The Denise Johnson Memorial Scholarship had funded 37 students so far. The Johnson Innovation Lab had become the heart of Southgate's research division, and the company's mission had shifted back to what Marcus and Denise had originally envisioned, helping small businesses supporting underserved communities, measuring success by impact rather than just profit. Victoria had also become Amara's unofficial mentor. They had dinner together at least once a month. Victoria had helped Amara with college applications, introduced her to female executives and engineers, taken her to conferences and industry events. "She's teaching me to be brave," Amara had said once. "Like Mom was." Marcus had nearly cried when he heard that. Now he checked his watch. "We should head out. Traffic's going to be rough." Amara grabbed her backpack. "Can we stop for coffee first? I need caffeine to survive Victoria's PowerPoint presentations." "She's not going to do a PowerPoint at dinner. You don't know that. She brought slides to your birthday last year. That was different. That was a retrospective on our friendship. Dad, it had pie charts." Marcus laughed as they walked out of the office together. The restaurant Victoria had chosen was upscale, but not ostentatious, a quiet Italian place in Buckhead, where the pasta was handmade, and the tables were far enough apart for private conversation. Victoria was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner table, with a bottle of wine and a nervous energy that Marcus had learned to recognize. "You're up to something," he said as he sat down. "I'm always up to something. That's why I'm a CEO." "This is different. You're fidgeting." Victoria laughed. "I don't fidget." "You've adjusted your napkin 4 times since we sat down." Amara grinned. "Busted." Victoria sighed dramatically. "Fine. I do have something to share. But let's eat first. I don't want to ruin the mood before the appetizers arrive." They ate. They talked. They laughed about Amara's latest science project, a failed attempt to train the goldfish Einstein to swim through hoops, and Marcus's ongoing war with the office printer. Some things never changed, even for chief innovation officers. By the time dessert arrived, Marcus could tell Victoria was about to burst. "Okay," he said, pushing his plate aside. "What is it? What's the big surprise?" Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. She slid it across the table to Marcus. "Open it." Marcus opened the folder. Inside was a single document covered in legal language and official stamps. His eyes scanned the page, then stopped, then went back to the beginning and read it again. "Victoria, what is this?" "It's a transfer of shares. 15% of Southgate Logistics to be held in trust for Amara until she turns 21. Victoria's voice was steady but emotional. "It's not enough. It doesn't make up for what my father did. But it's something. It's a piece of what should have been yours all along." Marcus stared at the document. 15%. At the company's current valuation, that was worth nearly $30 million. "I can't accept this." "You're not accepting it. Amara is." Amara looked between them, confusion and shock battling on her face. "Wait, what?" "Me." Victoria turned to her. "Your mother helped build this company. Your father invented the technology it runs on. You are their legacy. This is your birthright." "Victoria, this is too much. We talked about this. I don't want—" "I know what you want, Marcus. You've made that very clear for 6 years. You want to work. You want to go home to your daughter. You want to be left alone." Victoria's eyes glistened. "But this isn't about you. It's about Amara. It's about making sure Denise's daughter has the opportunities her mother never got to give her." Marcus was speechless. He looked at the document, then at Victoria, then at Amara. "Dad." Amara's voice was small. "What does this mean?" Marcus swallowed hard. "It means Victoria is trying to give you your future." "No," Victoria corrected gently. "It means I'm trying to return what was always meant to be yours." The table fell silent. Around them, the restaurant continued its gentle hum glasses, clinking quiet conversations, the soft background music. Finally, Amara spoke. "Can I say something?" "Of course," Victoria said. Amara took a deep breath. "I've spent my whole life hearing about what my dad gave up. How he walked away from millions to be home with me. How he sacrificed his career, his reputation, his dreams. And for a long time I felt guilty about that. Like I was the reason he lost everything." "Amara," Marcus started. "Let me finish." Amara's voice was firm. "But then I got older, and I started to understand what he really did. He didn't give up success. He redefined it. He decided that being there for bedtime stories was more valuable than board meetings, that picking me up from school mattered more than stock options." She turned to Victoria. "And now you want to give us money. $30 million. That's more than I'll probably ever earn in my life." Amara shook her head slowly. "But here's the thing, I already have everything I need. I have a father who chose me every single day for 15 years. I have my mother's memory kept alive through stories and photographs and scholarship funds. I have a future because someone showed me that success isn't about money. It's about what you build and who you build it with." Victoria's eyes were wet. Amara, I just wanted... I know, and I love you for it. I really do. Amara reached across the table and took Victoria's hand. But if you want to honor my mother's memory, don't give me money. Help me earn it. Help me build something the way she did. Something that matters. Something that lasts. Victoria wiped her eyes. What did you have in mind? Amara grinned, her mother's grin bright and mischievous. I want to start a foundation, a real one. Not just scholarships, but hands-on programs. Teaching kids from underserved communities how to code, how to run businesses, how to dream bigger than their circumstances. The Denise Johnson Foundation, Marcus said softly. Exactly. Amara nodded. Mom wanted to help small businesses compete with the big guys. I want to help kids from nowhere become the next big guys. Same mission, new generation. Victoria laughed through her tears. You're 15 years old and you're already thinking like a CEO. I learned from the best. Amara glanced at her father. Both of them. Marcus sat back overwhelmed. His daughter. The tiny baby he'd held in his arms while Denise slept, the toddler who'd asked where mommy was, the child he'd raised alone through grief and poverty and invisibility, was sitting here talking about foundations and missions and changing the world. Denise would have been so proud, so incredibly proud. What do you think, Dad? Amara asked. Can we do this? Marcus looked at her, then at Victoria, then at the document still sitting on the table. Put the shares in the foundation, he said finally. Use the dividends to fund the programs Amara's describing. That way it's not charity, it's an investment. Victoria nodded slowly. I can work with that. And I want to be involved, Amara added. Not just as a name on the letterhead. I want to actually work, develop programs, meet the kids we're helping. You'll have to balance it with school, Marcus warned. I know, but school ends at 3:30, remember? Amara grinned. I learned time management from a master. They talked for another 2 hours, about structure and logistics and timelines, about the kind of impact they wanted to make and the communities they wanted to reach, about Denise and what she would have thought of all this. When they finally left the restaurant, the night was warm and clear. Stars were visible despite the city lights, the same stars Marcus had watched on his balcony for years, wondering if Denise could see them too. Victoria hugged them both goodbye. I'm proud of you, she whispered to Marcus. Both of you. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. Your daughter just committed us to changing the world. I'm going to need a lot more coffee. Marcus laughed. Then he and Amara walked to the car together. Dad? Yeah. When we get home, can you tell me more stories about Mom, the real ones? The ones where she messed up or got frustrated or said something embarrassing. You want to hear about her failures. I want to hear about her humanity, the parts that make her real. Not just a hero in a story, but a person I could have actually known. Marcus smiled. I think I can do that. They drove home in comfortable silence. The city lights streamed past familiar landmarks, marking the distance between the office towers of corporate Atlanta and the quiet streets of Decatur, where Marcus had rebuilt his life. When they got home, Amara made tea while Marcus pulled out an old photo album, one he hadn't opened in years. They sat on the couch together, turning pages, and Marcus told stories he'd never told before. About the time Denise accidentally sent a profanity-filled rant about a difficult client to the client himself. About the night she cried for an hour because she'd forgotten to buy bread and convinced herself it meant she wasn't ready to be a mother. About the silly songs she'd made up, and the terrible puns she'd loved, and the way she'd fallen asleep mid-sentence when she was exhausted. Amara listened to everything, laughed at the funny parts, cried at the sad ones, asked questions that showed she was really trying to understand not just who her mother had been, but who she'd been becoming. By midnight, they'd finished the album and started on memories that had no photographs. She used to talk to you, Marcus said, when you were still in her belly. Long conversations about nothing. She'd tell you about her day, what she was working on, what she dreamed for your future. What did she dream? Everything. She wanted you to be curious, to be kind, to work hard, but not so hard you forgot to live. She wanted you to fall in love with something, anything, and pursue it with your whole heart. Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think I found it." "Found what?" "The thing I want to pursue. The foundation. Helping kids like I was helped. Building something that matters." Marcus felt his heart swell. "Your mother would be so proud of you." "I know." Amara smiled. "Because you've been showing me what that looks like my whole life." They sat together until almost 2 a.m., talking, remembering, planning. And when Amara finally went to bed, Marcus walked to the window and looked up at the stars. "Hey, Denise," he whispered. "I hope you can see her. Our girl. She's extraordinary. Everything you hoped she'd be and more." He paused, feeling the familiar ache that never quite went away. "I kept my promise. Every day. Every single day I chose her. I was there for the bedtime stories, the school pickups, the bad days, and the good ones. I taught her what you taught me, that love is a verb. That family is what you fight for. That success is measured in moments, not money." He smiled through tears. "And now she's going to build something. Something that carries your name and your spirit into the future. She's going to help kids who have nothing dream of everything. Just like we did." Marcus stood there for a long time, watching the stars, feeling Denise's presence in the silence. Then he went to Amara's room and opened the door quietly. She was asleep already, her face peaceful, her mother's photograph on the nightstand beside her bed. Marcus leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I love you, baby girl." He closed the door gently and went to his own room. On his dresser sat the old toolbox, still scratched, still dented, still carrying the logo of the company he'd built and lost, and somehow found his way back to. He touched it once lightly, then turned off the light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new choices. But tonight, Marcus Johnson slept the sleep of a man who had finally understood what mattered. Not the money he'd lost or the revenge he'd never taken. Not the years of invisibility or the corporate betrayals. Not even the company he'd rebuilt, or the innovation lab that bore his name. What mattered was this: a daughter who knew she was loved. A legacy that would outlive him. A life measured not in achievements, but in presence. Denise had taught him that. Amara had shown him it was true. And the world would learn it too. One scholarship at a time. One foundation program at a time. One family at a time. Because fame fades. Titles disappear. Money runs out. But what you build with love, what you sacrifice for fight, for choose every single day, that stays forever. And forever was exactly what Marcus Johnson had found.